I'm Natalie.
And I'm Mark.
Welcome back to Forge and Flow. We are going to flow into a very intriguing discovery that each of us have made, and we're going to talk about original creation and how we both...
It's a big one.
Just in a 10-minute video. We're going to talk about creation. We're going to talk about more so how we each came into discovering that really what's happening in the world today is we are returning to what once was. Now, I use a lot more magical language. I run a YouTube channel called Awakening Magic, because to me it is about magic literally returning to this world after taking a long hiatus. And whereas Mark, we've realized, came at this from a harmonic angle, musical angle. And so we're going to talk about original creation and the harmonic universe today. So about original creation, just to set the stage a little bit, from my inner knowing and seeing, the way that this came to fruition is literally through dreams and through an event that happened where I was knocked on my booty, essentially. Arse. Back in 2020, that it ignited such beautiful unfoldings that I always felt since I was a little girl, but couldn't put words to, and it wasn't very clear. And it was more of an aspect of, okay, now we're in a time frame where there's some big, massive, gargantuan changes coming in.
I think you missed one. Enormous.
And so mine was more through spiritual awakenings or transformations.
As was mine. Definitely a spiritual awakening, if you want to call it that. But what that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. 2020 was, as Natalie pointed out, a seismic shift in the way a lot of people see the world, see themselves in the world, and how things have been functioning and how things have been dysfunctioning. And there was this mass awakening that happened, and it manifested in very different ways for a lot of different people.
Yeah, so essentially, I was igniting in voice and throat chakra and speaking and sharing and poetry, whereas Mark's was
I was like
song.
Sacral solar plexus was the one that was really activating at that time. That willpower, that creativity. I was using music, full disclosure, I was using music as a therapeutic tool to get through some obstacles and challenges that I was facing in my growth phase of becoming the person that I am today. That is ever unfolding, but there was a period that needed some real serious tweaking to go on, and I was using the music as that creative outlet to get this stuff out of me.
Yeah, and this has been an expansive explosion, and it took me a while to even be able to say the words that I kept hearing, which is, you're an oracle of original creation. That's hard to say, because people look at you like, what?
Weirdo.
You have 20 eyeballs on your face. But this is part of activations that are turning on for many humans today. And tapping back into, again, original creation. What does that mean? Okay, original creation, if we look at this realm and how it was created, and that when it was created, there was guardians around the creation. So we can put it in terms of raising. We have lots of fur babies. So if we had a fur baby, we get the fur baby, we help the fur baby grow, and then helping that fur baby evolve. And in that evolution process, something big happens to where they are infiltrated and something bad happens to them. So when something like that happens, obviously, Mama and Papa Bear, the parents, the guardians, are going to come in and protect that little one. A lot of this original creation wisdom is coming through, from my perspective, from this guardian perspective of wanting to protect. not only humanity, but this entire realm, the earth itself, and every living being, every organic living creation on this planetary being and in this experience. And it's almost coming through this parental lens and a feeling. Like, there are times, like, we've lived in places and someone comes and sprays something poisonous onto a lawn, for example, and I would literally break out and cry. And I was chasing these guys like all over this property.
Get off my lawn.
So if anyone else is feeling this almost like parental protector guardianship, there's a big reason why. To express the emotion of these things, there can be words, or it comes through the original song and music that actually is this universe that, again, is coming through Mark.
Vibrations.
Yeah.
Almost in some ways the original way of communicating.
Yeah.
Not just the pre-humanity, pre-Earth. There were there were just frequencies and vibrations happening through the cosmos in terms of the creation of all the elements that we see. The elements were talking to each other, communicating with each other through vibration, through frequency that was harmonic resonance, and we still have that today. Obviously, very much our cells work that way within our bodies. They harmonically resonate with each other, hopefully harmonically resonate with each other. When they don't, that's where we see disease and ailments, stagnation, toxicity,
which we will be doing a lot of content around, and is a big component to what the Forge and Flow Sanctum is about, is
harmonizing
getting
our bodies,
communication back online.
Yeah. And so music or sound is in some ways the original form of communication. And even if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings or anything in that world, J.R.R. Tolkien,
which we are huge
super nerds. Whatever, Frodo. J.R.R. Tolkien wrote in his Silmarillion, which was the preamble to the whole Lord of the Rings thing, written after Lord of the Rings, but it tied in this creation story of the world that he was depicting, that was maybe channeled or whatever, but in his world, in his writings, he was talking about music and sound being the original way that the, quote, gods, the supreme divine beings were communicating solely through music before speech or words happened.
Yeah.
It was that resonance, that harmony, the melodies, the tunes, the tones, the notes, the vibrations, the percussions, all of that stuff working together to create. And that's why still today, music is such a huge part of this world. The music industry, totally different situation, but music is still very much a part of most people's lives, no matter what genre you're interested in. People love music.
It speaks to...
It resonates within us.
Now, we could say that...
There are some that are more harmonic than others, especially in the classical realms and things that were just really beautifully written and vibrated on a much more positive frequency than some other
that actually
genres
works
we see
with
today.
Human cells.
Yeah,
there's a difference. So
different video. But music is very profoundly used in tandem with words. Most people prefer music with some sort of lyrics, so it tells a story. Obviously, there's instrumental music that can still tell a story through the cadence of the sounds, and that's the music that I enjoy creating, and that's the album that I released called An Early Return.
To elevate this even a little further, there was this time frame where Mark was getting inundated with me coming in and going, oh my god, oh this is what I heard last night, oh my god. But one of the big things is it was like unlocking all these codes of what words mean, realizing in a big way how important it is to remember what words mean. And these meaning of words aren't usually, they're not what we think. So
you're talking about etymology,
breaking it down into sacred sounds. Even
to be clear, you're not talking about English only here,
right?
You're talking about the ancient languages,
ancient of ancient roots, as root ancient roots we can get to anyway. This is just things that were being shown to me, really. The first sacred sound that I really tapped into was HU. And that began a whole series of trickle effect of HU meaning harmonic universe, but HU also as tapped into human. And when you break down harmonic universe man, it means something really magical. And that's what we're tapping into here, is this truly magical sacred sound vibrations that are living in these words that we use every day that we often forget about. And there's tons of sacred texts that I am a huge nerd of, but mostly I dig into them to read into the energy of the words. Where are their truths and where are their distortions and manipulations and bold lies? Because there's plenty of those. But in Greek and Egyptian, or I say Cometian, which is a whole other video, but ancient texts 5,000 plus years ago, HU actually was utilized to speak of the word God. Because at some point, there were not words for that word. There was the nameless one. There was not a word for God, because it is something that is unspeakable, unknown. There was just no way to explain what that was. And Sufi mystics in the high peaks of Tibet even echo the HU, and this is a primordial sound that means the genesis of creation. So then there was the Druid lineage. Those tales also spoke of the sacred sound Hu. And I could just keep on going and going, which I will not. But I wanted to bring some interesting concepts into the word man, because we get so stuck on these gender, like man means male.
Yeah, man. Totally, man.
And this has got us into a lot of trouble, as most of us well know by now. But man is made up of the letters M, A, and N. And to look at those, we have to actually break down what those letters actually mean. These ancient forms of these earlier meanings around the actual letters. So M is the 13th letter of the alphabet. But at the root, the Semitic root, it actually connects into mu. So the Semitic form comes from a much earlier sign, and when you look at the M, it looks like waves of water. And then it connects into other roots, mayim or mayim, again, which means water. So it's also a noun that means masculine. So this can, if we break this all down, M can stand for the masculine principle of water, which is water as in movement and in action, which also connects into the masculine energy of movement and action. And now the A is the first letter of the alphabet, but it's derived from ancient Hebrew, Aleph. It's spelled a couple different ways, PH or F at the end. And this also goes back into Egyptian, and we could trace this back and back. So Aleph, when you look at the etymology, the image symbolizes powerful unity of divine energy in both the material and spiritual realms. So Aleph means ox or bull, as well as far as symbols, which is about strength, power, original, primal energy, or first, we could say. So the A means first or primal or creation, origin of life. And then the N, this is the 14th letter, at least, of the English alphabet, but then we can trace it back to ancient Hebrew, and it was connected into a symbol that was a fish or snake. And so the hidden meaning was that it was like a fish or hidden, and it had to do with water, like hidden in the ocean depths. So hidden, intimate, feminine. So N connects into the feminine principle of water. So we have the harmonic universe, and then the masculine and feminine principles of water as it relates to the origin of life. Boom. The N even connects into a former ancient root, N-U-N, which is interesting, I think. None, or noon, we could say. But in Sanskrit, for example, it's even connected into Nana, or Nana, which means mother. And it's really, again, amazing when you get into these more divine principles of what humans actually are. It's far much more than we're ever taught. We unfortunately never went through this in my schools. Any of my schooling.
No, just basic biology, right? Which they talk about the principles of the water and the cells, but they don't get into the sacred elements, the divine elements. They're not necessarily tied to an organized religion as much as a core truth that we are divine, we are unique, we are special, we are bigger than ourselves, we are tied to the cosmos and ourselves and each other and the natural world, the trees, the earth, the water, all the elements. There is this bigger cosmic connection that brings everything together for it to function properly, and we've lost our way from that. The trajectory has gotten away from that natural sense and into this more mechanical world and digital world that things are very steadfastly moving towards these days. And what we're trying to do is wrap that back around into that original idea that we are tied to this natural world. We are part of this natural world, not against it, not separate from it. And when we realize the simple things of what the word human, where that word came from, what makes us human, is not this most intelligent species on the planet, not the ones that are able to make things and build things. It's the fact that we are part of this universe, this harmonic universe.
Yeah.
Togetherness, not separate, things working together, functioning together for a purpose, and that purpose is unique to all of us, but on the grand sense, it's healing, happiness, joyfulness, and working together and functioning versus decaying and degrading and inverting.
Yeah, there's evolution, there's de-evolution, and
separating from nature is de-evolution. Which is interesting how the whole Industrial Revolution thing was billed as this amazing revolutionary idea, evolution, but it's quite the opposite, actually.
Yeah, that's many videos in and unto itself. But here's what is also intriguing. Through poetry, what was interesting is I knew Mark was working, obviously, on music, but it all came together in the end, and you called it an early return. So this is intriguing, which we should get into in just a moment, because I think that this is another aspect to many of us are feeling all of these early returns of the early energies, returns of the origin energies, returning to
early
organic,
back to the beginning,
primeval,
back to the sources of things.
Such beautiful. I use RE words.
The cycle coming back around.
Yeah, regenerate,
restore,
re-establish. It's literally every RE word. Rejuvenate. We could go on. One of the poetry books that I have coming out, which again, he knew I was working on it, but wasn't sure exactly what the final title would end up being. And it ended up coming out to be the reclamation, there's the RE word again, of all that is organic and pure, harmony through the blue ray of creation. And so there's these threads that are weaving into many of us. We're getting these weaving energies between us that are using the same words and the same ideas,
but using different mediums, modalities.
Yeah.
For her, it was writing through poetry, and for me, it was creating music.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Which was, again, instrumental music, so I wasn't using any words at all. Purely sounds and melodies. So I didn't even have to add that other layer of the writing, because that was already happening through her.
It's very interesting.
So the reason I named my album An Early Return And this album went through so many changes. It actually has been like 4 years in the making, on and off as a hobby, but got really serious about it in the last several months. But it went through a lot of changes, a lot of different name changes, a lot of different styles. The songs themselves went through a lot of different changes. So I actually originally called it Harmonic Universe. I think maybe I heard her say that, and I was like, oh, that sounds cool, and it's got a cool ring to it, and I like the concept of that. Ended up being a song title. Track on the album is called Harmonic Universe, so I kept the integrity there. But I named it An Early Return. And this is a phrase that kind of sounds strange when you think about an early return. An early return, what does that even mean? But it also has this kind of ring to it that makes it sound like it makes sense. An early return, it rolls off the tongue, and you can dwell on it and say, okay, I can try to interpret that, and I can find some things. But the way I came to find it was through the book The Tao Te Ching, which is an ancient Chinese script of 81 verses, and we have interpretations of that on another playlist. You can check it out. And this one is from number 59. I'll just read the first bit of it where I came to this phrase here. Number 59 from the Tao Te Ching. For regulating the human, so the word human's in there right away, in our constitution, and rendering the proper service to the heavenly, there is nothing like moderation. So moderation is a big thing that's talked about in this book in terms of avoiding excesses or extremes and finding that balance point, that harmony. There's that word again, that harmony between all things, which is finding that moderation in everything that you do. So it goes on to say, it is only by this moderation that there is effected an early return to man's normal state.
Normal state.
Normal state. So through moderation, through harmony, through balancing, through getting out of these extremes and finding that center through whatever modality you choose. For me, it's Qigong, Tai Chi, and for Natalie, it's that and other things too. But however you achieve that, you come back to that state of being that is natural.
Yeah.
We use the word normal in here, but normal,
there's a lot of ways
there's
to
other ways you
interpret,
could say that,
yeah.
but I see it as natural.
Yeah.
The natural way.
Yeah.
And the way we have been in these extremes in pretty much every facet of our lives is not normal, is not natural.
No.
And so finding that moderation, we're returning to the normal or the early version of human.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I was listening to the music and I was like, this is, of course, flowy mountain of emotion over here, which you are turning into too, by the way.
No, I'm not. You are.
But when I was seeing, I was like, oh my God, do you see what's happening?
You see?
Again, we're just one example of many of us on this planetary being that are being activated to remember, to restore, exactly, and
return.
See, it's RE. And again, we could get into many a philosophical question why we need to return. And I have my inner knowings, and I openly share that on my other channel, which we may or may not get to here because it may or may not be relevant. But the biggest factor is obviously what we all know. Our nervous systems have been under severe distress for many purposeful reasons, of which, again, we don't need to get into that here. But a normal state, a primordial state, the real hue,
harmonic state,
is what we are here to assist with.
And today, that's something you have to achieve. That's something you have to work at to achieve.
Yeah.
Whereas the early state, returning back to that normal state, it just was.
Yeah.
It just is. It was. And we didn't have to seek ways to get to that state because things were functioning in that harmonious way properly before things got all jacked up. And now we have to really work really hard at it because there's so many forces.
But not too hard. Not too hard. Not to stress.
Because then you don't want to stress yourself out.
Exactly.
Yes, good point.
We talked about that in our last video.
You have to work. You have to work.
Yeah.
And you have to find moderation in that work. But you still, it's not. We are not in the normal state.
No.
We are not in the natural state.
But by the way, there's not a part of living creation that is. Earth is working so diligently to restore herself,
what's been damaged,
or the Earth self, and so it's now our missions to restore ourselves alongside Mama Earth, if you will. But that includes our fur babies
and the trees and the flowers and the gardens.
But anyway, we just wanted to introduce this concept of an early return, original
Harmonic
creation, bringing in this aspect of what we want to celebrate, which is the divine spirit within all of living organic creation. Once again, those are my words, but we're also using inner splendor. It's the same, isn't it?
Vitality.
Yeah.
Vibrancy. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of our main hopes, intentions, missions, quests is to help restore humanity's framework that we are also divine.
So we hope there's some stuff in here that resonated with you, resonance, harmonically resonated with you, to help you liberate your imprisoned splendor, because we all have splendor within us that gets covered up at the muck and the goo of the world, and we want to radiate that out. That is our mission, to aid and guide you. You are your own healer. Remember that. We all have that healer within us. We are not healers for you, just simply guides to talk about things, to bring things to the surface, and to illuminate some of these subjects that can help you find your path, find your way, and liberate your imprisoned splendor. So please subscribe, and what was the last one?
Share with a friend.
And share with a friend.
Thank you so much for watching.